I'd like to call the Newman City Council special meeting of Tuesday, August 29th to order. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could please remain standing for the invocation, please. Thank you, God, for bringing us here safely tonight. Please give us the guidance and the wisdom to make the right decisions for our community. In this we pray. Amen. Amen. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Martina. Present. Applegate. Present. Radford.
Present.
Reed. Present. And Mayor Marquez.
Present. Item number 4, these are items from the public. While the City Council welcomes and encourages participation in the meetings, it would be appreciated if you would limit your comments to 3 minutes so that everyone may be heard. Matters under the jurisdiction of the Council and not on the posted agenda may be addressed by the general public at this time. However, California law prohibits the Council from taking action on any matter which is not on the posted agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the City Council. Are there any non-agenda items at this time? Seeing none. Items from the public, these are agenda items. Any member of the audience desiring to address the council on a matter on the agenda, please raise your hand or step to the podium at the time the item is announced by the mayor. In order that all interested parties have an opportunity to speak, any person addressing the council will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes unless the mayor and the council grants a longer period of time. Item 5 is to review streetscape bids and give staff direction to proceed. Cleve?
Do you want to skip it? Mayor, we're still waiting for our city engineer to get here. Okay. He's on his way. He should be here any minute now.
Okay.
Would you like to go to item 6 and then come back?
Why don't we go ahead and skip over to item 6. This is to review and approve conceptual design for the Senior Education Community Center. Cleve?
Okay. Let's see. Maybe for the benefit of the audience, I'll step down here so they can look at these. I don't have a larger one here. Anyone that wants to take a look at that is welcome. After the meeting, you're welcome to come and take a look at that. No. Okay. As the council knows, we've been working for the last couple of months now on a bond, a school bond specifically, but included in that is a center. Originally was touted mostly as a senior center. It's kind of changed exactly what it will be, but we're titling it a senior education / community center. We primarily used for seniors, could also offer some adult education classes out of there, but can be used as a basic community center for seniors for their lunches, weekly lunches that they have, other things, other programs that we will organize and have done throughout this facility. This facility, as I mentioned, is included within the bond. And I have before you tonight what is happening is this weekend, as many of you may know, we have the kickoff for the election campaign for the bond. And they're doing the initial kickoff Saturday morning at 7 o'clock in conjunction with the beginning of the Fall Festival and the balloon launch. So invite any of you who would like to be out there for that. We wanted to have, as part of this campaign as we get going, conceptual designs of all the facilities which will be built. As you know, there's others, the middle school, additions to the high school, and some improvements over at Bonita School in Crow's Landing are the other improvements included. And so I asked our city engineer to and his staff to draw up this conceptual design, and this is based on a facility that I was involved with and has recently been constructed in Lathrop. And their facility is also based on some studies of other facilities of similar sized cities that the type of needs that those have. So this drawing that you see here is something that our engineering office came up with. their architects that they have in their office. And then included with that, you also have actually the second view that you have with there is looking from the back of the building, kind of get an idea of what the size of the building will look like. The third attachment to this is a floor plan for the building. Again, this is patterned pretty much after the facility that we build up in Lathrop. Now, none of this is set in stone, and there will be probably changes as we go along, but this is a facility that the amount that is budgeted for this is $600,000, and that's what is placed in the bond to build this facility. And this facility can be built completely with that money. The design we're doing similar to what the school is doing, and the plan is to build this as a modular facility. There'll be a lot of add-ons that can go onto it. I've been and visited the one in Lathrop since they finished it, and it's well, they hadn't finished it yet, but they were close. They were still working on it. They've done some really nice things to it. Those of you, let's see, any of you who may have had a chance to see some of the things that they've done with modular facilities, including skylights in the facilities and other things. There's some really nice improvements that they can do to them to make them look nice. I told our engineers to pattern the architecture somewhat after the senior housing project that is over there, so that it will blend well with that. And so that's the kind of the design that they worked with. I'm open for any questions on this. Any changes that you would suggest would be great. I don't think we'll be locked in stone to anything we decide tonight, but we need to kind of decide on a conceptual design, some of the facilities, types of facilities that would be within this building and things like that. So if there's any comments or questions from the council.
Are there any questions for Cleve?
Yeah, please. On this drawing here,
Yes.
where is the senior center, senior housing in relation to this approximately? Right up there with the yellow?
If you look right over here, this is Prince Avenue.
Okay.
Prince Road, Prince,
Right.
is it Avenue? I forget. Anyway, and this is the main entrance into the senior housing project, okay?
So we're just south of that.
Right. We're just south of, this is their clubhouse that is being built, the yellow building you see. The rest of their buildings will be back in this area, behind this circle. Okay?
Cleve, would control and management of the day-to-day operations be under the senior housing manager or the city?
It will be under the city. Yeah. And there may be some things that will actually be done in conjunction with the school, since there are some details we still need to work out. For instance, somehow we will either sell the property to the school or lease it to them so that the building is built on school property, because that's a requirement for them to spend bond money. It has to be on school property.
You want to explain the other avenue too? There's one more avenue.
The other avenue is if we were to do special legislation to allow them to use school bond money to build a facility on non-school property. So those are the options that we have. But one of those, we haven't figured out which is the best yet, but the legislation has been done in a couple of areas. It was recently done in, I believe,
Livermore.
well, it was done in Livermore, but even more recent, it was done in one of the cities down the valley. I forget which one it was, but I just saw a copy of legislation that came out of one of those cities.
Cleve, you mentioned the possibility of having classes, extension classes here,
Mhm.
and I know this main activity room looks large. I can't tell from this what the size is of the room, but would you envision then having some sort of, I don't know, fold-away doors that would section off areas for classrooms? Or?
Well, you can do that. I don't envision that in the main activity room. What I did see was in the plan in Lathrop, the small activity room on what would be the left side of your drawing, there was a curtain dividing that room, and it was big enough to probably hold 20 people in each room, 20 to 30 people in each room. So, but that's an option to us, that we could also do curtain dividers in the main activity rooms if necessary. So.
Any other questions? No? Okay. we, is there consensus here that this conceptual approval is agreed to? Do we,
Probably just do a motion, simple motion to approve the conceptual design.
can we have a motion to approve the conceptual design?
I move that we approve the conceptual design at this time.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Item number 5 is to review streetscape bids and give staff direction to proceed. Cleve?
Okay, thank you. I'll give a brief introduction and talk about some of the options first, and then I'll turn some time over to our city engineer to explain the bids that came in. As all of you know by now, we received the bids on August 23rd, and unfortunately, and much to our surprise, the bids came in a lot higher than what we expected. Basically, we had approximately $1.5 million bid, or estimated for the project, and it came in at 2.6, a little over $2.6 million. So, a little over $1 million higher than what we expected to spend. As I've outlined in your report, there are some options that we have. The first one that I have given you is to supplement the bids amount with additional RDA money, which was additionally budgeted for the project, to bring the amount up to the needed amount to complete the project in full. We could consider scaling back the project in terms of size. For example, not do as many streets as we had originally planned. Perhaps we just do Main Street. Perhaps we do the center blocks of Tulare, Fresno, and Main Street. There's various options that we could consider that way. We could also consider scaling back the project scope in terms of the features included in the streetscape. We could drop off certain items to cut down the cost. The other option is to simply wait and rebid the project for construction in the spring in hopes of getting more favorable costs at that time. And there may be some others that the city engineer will present tonight. Those are kind of some general guidelines of things we can do. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up on these to explain to the council. Number one, we have a little bit over $1 million that we originally had planned to spend on this streetscape project prior to having the additional money which we were able to get through state funding. So if when we got the state funding, as you know, we planned on not having to spend that and being able to use that for future projects such as the plaza, Highway 33, the extension of Main Street, or the alley projects, or I think 3 or 4 that are specifically designed to be done in the downtown area. With this happening, if we decide to spend that money, obviously it would all go towards the streetscape, and we would have to start looking for other funding sources for those future projects. To go along with number 2, in terms of scaling back the size of the project, as you may recall, the funding that we received for this project came from congestion management and air quality money, or CMAQ money. We have a concern that if we scale back the project, under the CMAQ program, we are required to meet certain guidelines in terms of emission reductions and things like that. We have a concern that if we scale back the project, we may be asked to recalculate those figures and may not therefore qualify for the money if that happens. So there's a possibility under that scenario that we could lose a portion or even possibly all of the approximately $1.5 to $6 million that we've got in grant money. The same scenario would hold true for number 3. If we scaled back the scope, what we've initially learned is that we would probably have to go back to the STANCOG board to gain their approval of the project again. Our concern is that this scenario, if we still did the number of streets that we plan to do, number of blocks of streets, it would probably not lose our emissions reduction requirement, but it very likely would put it again before the STANCOG policy board, which would have to give us approval for the funding again. And they may not do that. They would have the option of saying, we need this money, let's take part of it and put it to another project. Since they're scaling back their project now, they don't need all that money. So there's two areas there under both of those of scaling back the project that we could be in jeopardy of losing a portion or all of our money, state funding that we've got in approximately $1.6 million. With that, I'm going to turn the time over to the city engineer, and I will, after he is finished, probably give you a recommendation at that time after we've had time to discuss it a little more thoroughly.
Richard?
Good evening. What I'd like to do is just briefly go over the bid tabulation and the analysis of the two bids. I guess everybody has a copy of that. And just so you're aware, staff, including Cleve and us, we went through this item by item just to see, where the biggest discrepancies were. If you look through it item by item, you'll see that obviously there were some that were missed quite a bit, some that were where we came in high, some where we came in close, and approximately half the items we were neck and neck with the contractors, but there were a couple of items that, for the most part, were the main items that increased the original estimate. Those being item number 3, which is the demolition, and in our conversations during the bidding process, we had a number of phone calls about this item, and there were a lot of concerns about disturbing the existing buildings out here. As you know, some of the buildings are in pretty precarious situations right now, with foundations being not maybe what they should be, and the contractors were very concerned about this item, and as you could see, they took the obvious conservative approach, and that come in substantially higher than what we had originally estimated on that. There are a couple of other items, such as street lights, which there's a substantial amount of work to be done to those, which we hadn't anticipated. The electrical item also came in substantially higher than what we had originally estimated. And when we went back and analyzed where we can maybe cut or reduce the scope of not the scope, but reduce the cost of some of these items, those are some of the areas where we might be able to look at a little bit harder. And should you decide to go ahead with the project, work closely with the contractor that hopefully is ultimately selected, and see if we can reduce some of the costs in these areas. What I'd like to do is go through the options that Cleve has mentioned just briefly. And the first option that we looked at was, as a cost savings option, is to just to do what we term option number 1, which was just to do mainly down the Main Street corridor only, which I think, do we have copies of these? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, why don't you just go ahead. It's kind of hard to see the color on some of these, so what we've done, we've prepared kind of a colored board here for you to kind of take a look at, in addition to what you have there. Let's put that up. Just put that up there in the audience. Option number 1, as I mentioned, was just going down the main corridor of Main Street and doing everything that we've bid out, all the items, and not doing any of the side streets such as Tulare, Fresno, or Merced Street. And as you can see, that cost is right about 1.5, a bit more than 1.5 million. Option number 2, that's to do Main Street from Fresno to, I should say from Merced to Fresno, including doing Fresno and the intersection at Merced. The cost of doing just that portion is at about 1.8 million. The third option that we looked at was to do just Main Street between Fresno and Tulare, and including doing Fresno and Tulare, which is kind of the age that we've referred to of Fresno and Tulare and Main Street in between. That number is at right about 1.7 million. And option number 4 is to proceed to do the entire project, all the streets that were originally anticipated, but to scale back some of the items that we felt could possibly be scaled back on. And some of those items include changing the driveway types that lead into and out of parking lots and into and out of the alleyways, and going just to a straight ramp type of driveway instead of the type that we've indicated on the plan, which would eliminate planters at those driveway entrances and eliminate the handicap ramps that would be required for those types of driveways. Some of the other things that were brought up were doing improvements on the street lights, which is still even a possibility should we go ahead and decide to do the whole project. And the main reason behind that is that PG&E has informed us that there's a possibility that we may be in line for having those street lights painted and cleaned up, just because of the type of rate they're on, and we could realize the cost savings by not having to do that and letting PG&E go ahead and do that for us. The other items that we listed here would be eliminating the landscaping and the irrigation that was proposed in those planted areas throughout the project. And if we went ahead and deleted those items, that would get it down to about 2.2 million approximately. And of course, last but not least would be option number 5, which Cleve alluded to, is just going ahead and doing the entire project at about 2.6 million. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to go over any of these items or any other questions that you might have at this point. That's about all I have right now.
Richard, I went through these items, and there's 12 of them here that you underbid anywhere from 2 times to 9 times underbid of what it should have been. It just seems like, well, none of us on the dais are engineers by far, but I just feel that if we were given these items and made a few phone calls to the proper people, county or whatever, contractors, asked questions, that we could have come up with a closer bid than that. I think it's just totally unacceptable.
Well, as you could imagine, we were under a very compressed time schedule here,
That's true.
and we were given the direction to move ahead with it. We prepared the plans based on the original scope. You know, there wasn't much that would change in terms of actual scope of work from the original, I would say the original design that was proposed by RRM. We did basically prepare the plans for that concept. And if we had, I'm going to say, even if we had come up with costs closer to what the ultimate bids came in at, we'd be at the primarily the same point we are now. What did we cut out? The other thing is, of course, everybody is busy right now. The contractors are as busy as they've ever been.
That's true.
And, you know, both of these contractors are both some of the best in the area, and they do some of the best work around. And they bid it as such. There's nothing we can say about that part of it other than, again, the cost of the work is basically what it came in at. I don't know if stretching out the time frame could have helped lower those bids, possibly. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. We didn't have the time to stretch out the actual requested time that is being asked for in the bid. So we're being squeezed from a lot of directions here, and there isn't.
Well, I realize.
Time frame I'm referring to is the actual time frame for construction here. We are under.
No, I realize that's
And to
that's
get
something
the
else.
project.
It just, that has nothing to do with the engineering part of it, though.
Right.
Okay, as far as the as far as the bids go, we were talking about how many days for completion? We're talking 90 days.
90 days, right.
90 days.
According to two of the bidders, they made a statement that one of the reasons why it was so high is that we gave them a time frame that they had to get it done within.
Right.
And so therefore they said that they were going to have to work 60 to 72-hour work weeks, which means double overtime in union. And that really hurt.
Did we get a cost breakdown as far as what the overtime costs were?
No, we haven't gotten any breakdowns from either contractor.
We don't. Okay. Well, one of the things that are there
The concrete and pavement, that it seems like we could have hit a closer number than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I don't think it's gonna make a difference as far as I'm concerned. This project has gotta go ahead, and I think Cleve said some things that are very interesting, that if we try to cut back, we may lose some funding.
That's true.
Right.
I certainly don't wanna find myself in that position.
Well, let me jump in here as far as the, to expand a little bit on what Cleve said here. As far as this option number 2 and 3, as far as the scaling back the project, at the time we were fortunate enough to have our supervisor as the policy board chair of StanCog. And I think what happened is once I made the motion for this money to go to the next highest project on the list, I think after the policy board realized at the next meeting that what had happened, that we were going to get this 1.2 million. I mean, I don't think they were less than thrilled by the fact that we were getting, this much money. And I think Cleve's right, and knowing the fact that Modesto's the policy board chair now, that if we had to go back to those guys and say, we need to make some changes, I have a feeling that they would probably say, well, why don't you bring us a new formula, because as it was, the requirement was how the formula worked out, that it had to meet, some air quality requirement. The figure was 3.0, with emission reductions. Well, we were at 3.02, which means that we barely got in there. I mean, we were extremely lucky to get this money. And if we go back to them again, if we have to do anything with rescoping this thing, they may ask for recalculating the formula to see if we still meet the. We have to give all of it back. And at the very least, if we change the scope of it, I suspect that the policy board will say, let's see where, you know, what type of money that comes back to us. So as far as 2 and 3 go, I don't think we're any money ahead either way on this. I think the only viable options is looking at number 1 and number 4.
If we were to go with option 4, would any of that money be at risk? Are we within a requirement for completion in order to get the money?
I don't believe so, are we, Richard? There's time to, you know, we've met the deadlines that we needed to get the project approved in order to move forward with it. So we have plenty of time to rebid it and then look at construction in the spring without being in jeopardy of losing any money.
Okay, well then, my question then to Richard is that since we have those assurances, and if we go bid out till spring and go for the full project, which is now 2.6, do you feel that the bid will come in lower because we're not putting them on time constraints and not making them do overtime?
Well, you would think that would be the case. Of course, there's never any assurances. And just like anything else, this thing could come in higher.
Well, I understand that the 2 bidders are willing to come down and talk to us
Right.
and go through this scenario.
And there may be a possibility, maybe a third or fourth
Right.
bidder might come into the game, which might
But
help.
both Tykert and
Golden Bay.
Golden Bay said that they would come over.
Go ahead. I'd like to see staff and any other interested persons get a hold of, or get with the contractors, the bidders, and see if, just go over this list and make sure that they are thinking the same thing we're thinking on each of these items. It's possible that they have a total different idea of what we're thinking on some of these. And then also go ahead and rebid it in October for start in February, because we're getting into a point now where we're going to start affecting the merchants for the Christmas season, and we can't do that. But a lot of projects out there that we could use that redevelopment money for. Besides this, if we could, whatever we can save here is fine.
I think that what we can do is go back and examine a couple of things. For instance, not only our estimate, but if you look at under the demolition, I think there is a lot of question out there. It varies even between the 2 contractors by almost $100,000 in what it would take to do the demolition. Now, so I believe that there may be some ways to meet with them and to examine our own specifications and make sure that those are tightened up somewhat, if you will, to ensure that they know exactly what they'll be working on. Perhaps if they have a little bit more time to examine the conditions of the buildings and the sidewalks, etc., prior to bidding the project, we'll give them some more time to bid it. Another example is the electrical, and there's several others in here that there are bid specifications. There may have been some misunderstanding of exactly what was to be done there. And if those things can be cleared up, as well as we will still have a time frame in there, but work out and figure out what would be a more reasonable time frame so that not as much, or if any, overtime is incurred. And then also there may be some advantages to the contractors if they, if we open the bids, say, in October and they have time to plan and the construction project does not actually start until March, hopefully there will be some advantages in planning and being able to get the project, at least the price down somewhat lower. There are no guarantees. There's always the possibility also that the price may come in higher than it is. That's a risk that we would take. But
Cleve, how long is this bid open for?
this one was open for almost 30 days, 28 days, I believe.
See, if you go out in October, then you got the opportunity to give them 2 to 3 months to sit there, and then come over here and talk with Richard and staff, and try to iron some of these things out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Are there any other comments? Okay. Did anybody in the audience want to get up and address this? No? Go.
Good evening. My name is Carol Stevens. I reside at 1107 S Street, and I was a member, one of the members of the Streetscape Committee. Upon hearing this revelation, I would urge you to wait, not make any hasty judgments, and because I'd like to see the whole project completed, that's for certain. I can't imagine splitting the town in half. That one really puzzles me. But I would like to also have the committee revisit some of these concerns and discuss it with Cleve a little bit more. I know that it is in our position to make this determination, but I would certainly like to be part of it, and I'd like to have some explanations, and I'd like to be able to have an exchange with Cleve at that time. That would be possible.
I don't see any problem with it.
What about having the members of the Streetscape Committee meet with the contractors at the same time? And I mean, at a time, you can go ahead and do it, iron out things first, and then.
I suppose that's an option. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what that would do, meeting with the contractors, but
I just think we need to have a meeting where we just kind of go over some of these, the suggestions that you've made or that you've made to the council. I know I personally have several questions I'd like to ask, and I'm not sure this is the forum for it, but I think that the committee would, I mean, speaking for a couple of them sitting back there, we would like to meet again with you and talk about at least what we feel that the direction you should go. And we'd like to come back with another recommendation, because the recommendation we made originally, it doesn't look like it's going to happen under the circumstances. So, anyway.
maybe not. Yeah.
I'd like
Sure.
for you to consider that anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bob Naboa Jewelers, 940 Fresno Street, and I'm going to take some liberty and say I represent, I think, most of the business people, merchants on the core of the downtown when I make the comments that I'm about to make. First of all, I would hope, and I'm hearing a little bit of lean toward not doing this project at this time, and I certainly encourage you to consider
Sounds
that.
to me like it's more of a consensus that we're not going to do it at this time.
Well, I haven't heard a vote yet. And the one thing that I would like to point out to you that is certain to happen, and that is weather. And with as tight a time frame as you've tried to put on this, I don't see how you're going to stick to it for a number of reasons. One, I took the liberty to do some research on the good old internet, and I found out that we have been really, I don't know if it's fortunate, but we have not had a normal fall rain season in about 4 years. So the chances are pretty good that we are going to get our average 3/4 of an inch in October, almost 2 inches in November, and 1.5 inches in December. Those are pretty good odds that we're going to get that this year, because they're calling for a very normal rain pattern this year. So that alone is going to really put a fly in the ointment, as so to speak, to extend this project far beyond anything that I think any merchant in town would find acceptable. I had one of our salesmen that calls on us regularly come in the store just on Monday, and we were doing some looking at demographics and numbers and spending habits and that sort of thing. And I think any merchant knows related, well, it all happens in December. Well, it all doesn't happen in December. It happens from October through December. And I had not really said anything early on because I had always hoped that this thing would be done a lot sooner, and that apparently isn't going to happen. So I think for you as a council to, you know, at this point there is no option for me. I think that you need to put the merchants first and put this project on hold until such time as it can be done in a manner that all issues are considered and that the best possible price is there for everybody and there is more than just this price to pay. So I thank you for your consideration.
Anybody else? Any other comments or questions up here? All right, what's the council's direction?
I make a motion that we